On this episode of The Peaks Life, Mike and Lynn talk to a truly inspirational lady, Tanya Sheckley. Her amazing courage, positive mindset and determination are an inspiration to us all. We talked to Tanya about raising a daughter with cerebral palsy, how she overcame the grief of losing her child, setting up a school for children with physical disabilities, and prioritising wellness in a really busy world, as well as, now wait for it, Harold the disability dog. You've got to see him to believe him. Tanya's journey has some really powerful messages and lessons for us all, so join us on this really exciting episode. So today we're joined on The Peaks Life by Tanya Sheckley. Now, as you all know, Mike and I are really big on mindset and how having the right attitude can really make a difference in your life and in your wellness journey. And sometimes you meet someone whose story is so powerful and so moving, and it really demonstrates how the power of the mind can really maximize what we as humans are capable of. And Tanya is just one of those people. She inspires hope, she lights up lives, and she touches hearts. And I think we're incredibly lucky to have Tanya with us today. She's got an amazing story and she's got some amazing messages for anyone who's trying to improve their wellness or is in the executive space, because she is a passionate entrepreneur. So welcome, Tanya. Thanks for joining us. And we're very excited because of all these amazing experiences you've got to share. So I want to dive straight in and pass across to you and say, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of your show and to share whatever I can that would be helpful to others. I guess I can start in my journey, where I started working in the corporate world. So I spent 10 years in sales and marketing, selling beer in the States. And it was a blast. I got to travel all over, but the whole time I always felt like there was something else missing. Like I was supposed to be doing something else. I was supposed to be doing something more. It just didn't feel like it was exactly where I should be. And so I got my master's in entrepreneurship and started dabbling with different things that I could do. I was in the process of launching a marketing company. I had gotten a personal training certification. I had gotten my yoga certification. And I was pregnant, very pregnant with my daughter when I finished my MBA. When my daughter was born, she, as children often do, had other plans for me. My daughter was born with a disability. She was born with cerebral palsy. She had no suck, swallow, or gag when she was born. And so everything that I was working on was suddenly thrown off the table and all of my focus was on her. So I was fortunate to be able to stay home and be a stay-at-home mother with her and my other two children over the next almost 10 years. And during that time, learning everything that I could about brain development and child development and brain plasticity and the neuroscience of learning and how I could help my daughter and all three of my kids become the best that they possibly could be, which led us into the school system. And after talking to doctors around the world, working with programs around the country to help my daughter become her best, we went to the school district and they said, no, we're not going to do any of that stuff. We're only going to do what's educationally necessary. And I started thinking, there's got to be a better way. I can see in my mind this better way of education and how it needs to fit around the student instead of around the schedule of the school. And so the idea of starting a school was born with her inspiration. So we launched Up Academy on paper in 2015. And then in spring of 2016, my daughter unexpectedly passed away. And so we were left with this huge void, obviously, from the loss of our daughter, but also this question with the school of, do we continue to move forward, or do we drop this and just take a step back and go do something else? And the reality was we had spent so much time learning with her, understanding her differences, working with people around the world to help her reach her potential, that we knew we had gained so much knowledge that we could help other kids reach their potential. It was really important that we continue to move forward. And so our school opened its doors in 2018. We're in our second year of operation. We have 9 full-time students now. We offer personalized and project-based, concept-based learning. It's a very progressive model and also inclusive of students with physical disabilities. And so we do have one student with cerebral palsy who recently joined us as we figure out how to really make our ideas around a fully integrated neurodevelopment program happen in real life and come to fruition. So it's a really exciting time for us.
So congratulations on everything you've done with the Academy, because you've only scratched the surface there. I know there's a lot more to it. And, you know, listening to your story and reading a lot about what you've been doing before we got onto the podcast today, you've clearly dealt with a lot of challenges in your life, and especially the last few years. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is a bit more about the school, actually, and then I'd like to talk about Eliza and some of those challenges. But you use a very unique approach in your school, because as you said, you couldn't find what you wanted for Eliza, so you developed your own approach. Can you tell us a bit more about how you deal with the children with disabilities, how you integrate the able-bodied and disabled children, and how you allow them to achieve what they're truly capable of?
Yeah, of course. We take as a general perspective, we have no special education. I don't have a special education teacher on site. There's no classroom, there's no space for that. Everybody is integrated, everybody does a full general education curriculum, and we assume competence in all of our students. So regardless of whether they can speak and whether they can express their knowledge, we assume that what they're hearing and what they're learning and what they're working on with their peers is all integrating and making sense to them until we get to a point where we see otherwise. And generally what we found is, you know, when the students are all learning together, when they're learning in time, when learning is consistent, they all learn at the same pace and they all learn together. So all of our students are in the same classroom. The students who need extra support get the extra support when it makes sense. So the student we have currently is nonverbal, non-ambulatory. So he has a one-to-one aide to help him with all of the mobility issues, and also to adapt some of the things. So if the kids are all working on a worksheet, his aide might put the numbers up on a whiteboard and he's picking numbers off of a Velcro strip because he can't write them. But he's doing the same work. It's just in a different way that's accessible to him. And that's our overarching goal for all of our students. We've also found, and one of the things I saw with putting my daughter into public school, she went to a very progressive parent participation school that was based in project-based learning as well. And one of the things we saw with the project-based learning is just how well the students really could integrate and work together when they're given the opportunity to collaborate and problem solve. Because her strengths, because of her limited mobility, her strengths were really curiosity and observation and decision making, whereas some of the other students needed to tinker and to play and to touch and to fiddle. And so she would watch all of this, and then they'd get to a point where they couldn't decide, you know, which way to go, which is best, what do we do? And so they'd ask her, like, what do you think? What did you see? How does this work? And she would be able to participate and collaborate in those ways. And so when the kids are all allowed to work together, it allows them to draw on each other's strengths, and they're all capable of learning the material as long as we give them the opportunity and the chance.
And it's a really interesting, you know, example of teamwork, you know, and demonstrated so well by children who just dive in, and, you know, they don't consider each other's differences. They just do what they're really good at. And they draw on each other. I think one of the things that I read about, Tanya, was that your daughter specifically had a mental age which was far in advance of her physical capability because of her limitations. Can you just talk a bit about how, how that manifests itself, and how she would get on with her day, and how you enabled her to use her mental capacity?
Yeah, well, she was age appropriate. So she liked the things that other 6-year-olds like. She could read the way other 6-year-olds could read. She was a little above her grade in reading. She was a little above her grade in math, but still in line with where other kids who were a little above grade level were within her grade. But we always gave her the opportunity to express what she knew and to be a part of everything that we did. She was never left out. She was always seen as an equal. And so given equal opportunity, she had equal expectation of doing everything that her peers were doing.
And I think, again, that's the mindset, the approach that you take with the children that you have in the school, and you took with your daughter, can translate into a real parallel for any of us, that we often judge ourselves, and society will often judge what we can and cannot do. But if we can overcome that, and we have the right mindset and attitude, we can achieve, again, a lot more than often we think or people would imagine.
Absolutely. It's a concept that I call the expectations gap. The difference between what you expect, whether it's out of yourself or what other people expect of you. In Eliza's case, and in the case of a lot of special needs kids, our expectations are pretty low because that's what society has generally conditioned us to believe. But possibilities is a whole nother thing. Whether it's us who are able-bodied and in our work and our career and our lives, or a student who's not being given the opportunity because of an expectation, there's a big gap between that expectation and what is possible. And so how do we as humans overcome that and look towards the possibilities instead of just the expectations?
Absolutely, love that.
Yeah, I love the assumption that the kids are learning rather than the assumption the kids aren't learning. So they're going into a positive environment. So immediately you're assuming that everything that they're in the environment for, they're taking on board. And it's only when they need support and you recognize that you provide support, which is probably very opposite to how they've been judged outside of that learning environment.
Absolutely.
So if we look at, actually, before we look at you personally, I actually wanted to talk about, I want to talk about Harold.
Harold, we love Harold.
So,
Harold just walked in. Actually, I said that. There he is.
Hi.
I love that. He is just telling the story.
They do. So watching just saw Harold, but for the people who are listening, do you want to just tell us about Harold and the lessons in life that Harold, who is a little dog, for those who are listening in, just tell us a bit about what Harold teaches the children and what he can teach us as well.
Yeah, of course. So Harold is a little dog, and he's paralyzed in his back legs. And so part of what endeared me to Harold was obviously his expressive ears. But aside from that, how he could relate to students who are different. And when I've had him in environments and had him around a lot of people who are wheelchair users, especially children who are wheelchair users, they look at him and suddenly here's this other creature who is like me. And we all want to belong, right? We all want to see other people who are like us. That's a universal desire. And so Harold provides that for kids who are wheelchair users, but he also provides this vibrant attitude of positivity that anyone can see. It's contagious. He's the happiest little dog, regardless of his abilities or disabilities. And so that's really his lesson, is that it's about the attitude that you have, not about the ability that you have. Because attitude can overcome almost anything, even that you may believe or expect that your ability level may hold you back from. But it's the attitude that's the most important thing. And so Harold helps us to see that. He's finished his therapy dog training. He comes to school quite frequently. The kids often, if they need a break, sometimes they'll ask their teacher for a Harold break. and they'll come out and they'll pet him for a few minutes and then go back to class. He goes to library time and they read books to him because he doesn't care if you get a word wrong when you're reading. It's great practice. And so he's become, really an integral part of our school.
That's very, very cool. Love it. And love the demonstration of the fact that, the attitude again, the mindset, you can overcome everything. And I guess it's a perfect segue, Tanya, into your own journey back to what you've dealt with in the last few years. You've had some major challenges. You've gone through, what was a really tough experience with your daughter, and then to lose her, when you were building the concept for the school. Can you just talk a bit about how you personally dealt with the challenge, with the grief, and continued on with life and with the academy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, grief it's a funny thing. It comes and goes all the time. I'm sure it will be with me for the rest of my life. And the phase that it's in now is similar to actually where a lot of people probably are right now with what's going on in the world. A lot of people's reaction to COVID-19 and the virus and the stay-at-home orders has been very similar to grief, and that loss of motivation feeling, and the feeling helpless and feeling kind of out of control, and having mornings where you just don't want to get out of bed. Those are all symptoms of grief, because right now there are things that all of us have given up. In the case of losing my daughter, it was obviously more traumatic than that. It was terrible. And, we survived for 3 months off of our community bringing us dinner because I couldn't function. There were literally days that I got up in the morning and went and ate brownies for breakfast because that's all I wanted to do. Before my daughter, I had lost all the baby weight. I had lost 35 pounds. I put 20 of them back on after she passed. But then there comes a point where you just have to question, you need that space and you need that time. And it still comes up. There are days when I'm just not motivated and I can't focus. And I just have to understand that I still need to give myself that space and that time. And it's important for mental health to do that. You can't keep pushing through that stuff. It doesn't get anywhere. It just gets worse. So stepping back and understanding that. And for me, it was a year before I could function and do anything and work in any capacity other than feeding my dogs and my other 2 children and like day-to-day life. So we took a year away from the project, away from opening the school, and just focused on our family and putting us back together and making sure we were in a good place. But like I was saying, there comes a point where you have to question, like, I can't eat brownies for breakfast every day. I can't lay in bed and pull my covers over my head every day. That's not benefiting anyone. It's not benefiting me. It's not benefiting my family. It's certainly not benefiting the world, because I do have all of this knowledge that I have learned that she has given me. And so how can I honor her life? What were the things that were most meaningful? And how can I take that and create something good in the world? I kind of came down to 2 options. I could eat brownies all the time, or I could try and take what I had learned and help other people and make the world a better place with it. And so slowly after a year, that work started to begin again. And like I said, it's a messy process, and it's up and down, and it's not all the time, and it's ongoing, and grief never really ends. Even when we look okay and feel okay, there's still always this peace. But it's, how do we take those things that happen to us in our lives and figure out where the lessons were, and how can we honor that and share that to help others who are struggling with those lessons?
So Tanya, you're a successful entrepreneur, you run a business, you have a family, you've got lots of demands on your life. Moving forward with that wellness theme and looking after yourself, and I guess having the mindset but caring for your mental health and your wellness, give us a snapshot into a day in the life of Tanya. What do you do to look after yourself, to remain balanced, to remain grounded, and to do what you do surrounded by all these pressures?
Yeah, so I think it's an ongoing process. I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, for me, I need to work out. I need to be physically active. I need to break a sweat. That's part of how I think. It's part of how I work through things. And it always has been. Movement has always been a part of my life, from being a dance major to a snowboard instructor to mountain bike racer to triathlete and marathon coach and now mostly mom, but still a little piece of all of those things. But it's really important to stay active. And so I've been trying to find that time in my day. And I found that if I get up early and do it before anybody else gets up, that's my time. And I am not a morning person. I'm a night person, but my life doesn't allow me to be a night person right now. And so I started out the beginning of the year, actually it was the beginning of last year, trying to get up between 5 and 5:30 every morning so that I could either spend the time working or spend the time working out. So I had a solid hour to hour and a half every morning to take care of me, whether it was writing, whether it was working and getting tasks done so I could focus on other things during the day, or whether it was working out. That was my morning time. And it took me until about November of last year to when that was a comfortable time to wake up in the morning. And now it's a little bit, you know, pushed back because we're all stay at home and there's no more commute and my kids can sleep in a little bit. But I'm still up an hour to an hour and a half before everybody else. And now that time is almost exclusively my workout time. So I get up, I go work out, I go for a run, I work out with my trainer. I do some yoga. I have a spin bike, which I use the Peloton app, although I have not purchased the Peloton bike. So I do one of those things in the morning to clear my head and get the blood pumping, and then step into my day. So then it's, you know, I'm a working mom, and right now I'm a working stay-at-home homeschooling mom. So then it's, you know, cooking everybody breakfast, getting the kids into their school, getting some of my work done, getting the kids a snack, going back to my work, getting the kids their lunch, going back to my work, answering any of their math questions, their science questions, making sure they're online and in their Spanish class, and then getting some work done. And it's, you know, things aren't as neat and compartmentalized as they once were, but understanding that I can still chunk time into, they're going to be online for an hour, I have an hour, what's the priority? And continuing that throughout the day, so that we're still getting work done. And then ideally, I love to cook, I love to make dinner, so it's been really fun to be able to actually cook and make dinner almost every night for the family. And then an early bedtime. 8 hours of sleep is non-negotiable. If I don't sleep, I don't function. I do okay, like I do okay for a day, but if there's 2 or 3 nights in a row where I don't sleep, I'm useless. I might as well just stay home and do a puzzle.
I just want to highlight some of those things that you say, because I think, you know, you're a great example, Tanya, for many of our busy executives and entrepreneurs and parents, you know, or a combination of all of those, who have lots and lots and lots of demands on their time, and, you know, often will come to us and say, but I just don't have time. You know, my day is full. My day is full of children. It's full of interruptions. It's full of work. It's full of different time zones. I have business to run. You know, whatever the, you know, and I'm going to be quite harsh, whatever the excuse is, they've got often lots of them. And those of us who are workaholics and who are the busy people who get a lot of stuff done, have packed days, it's very easy to allow wellness to take a back seat. But there we've just heard about, you know, all the things that you do, you know, lots and lots for your family, lots for the academy. You are, you know, working from home at the moment. You've got all these demands, and yet you're still prioritizing. But it wasn't easy, and it's a process and it's a long game. So I think, again, it's really interesting to hear how you've, you know, progressively found what works for you. You need the time, so you've got that morning time. You've now dedicated that to yourself and to your wellness routine. You've got a personal trainer, so you've got accountability, and you've used all the tools and finally found your groove. found the place that works for you. But from the sound of it, it wasn't always like that, and you didn't always prioritize your wellness. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Going back to, when my husband and I met, he was training for an Ironman and I was in decent shape. So a lot of our courtship was, well, actually, like our third date was a 100-mile bike ride. So it's the only century I've ever done. I'd always wanted to do one. And he's like, let's do this. I'm like, okay, sounds good. Why not? So he was training for the Ironman. We did a lot of our courtship was training and running and biking and swimming. And he taught me how to do flip turns. He was a swimmer in high school. I could swim well enough to not drown in a triathlon. So we had a lot of fun with that in the early days. But then, 3 kids took a toll on my body, and having, especially with my oldest with physical disabilities, my time was spent being her arms and feet most of the time, helping her walk, helping her move around, taking her to the bathroom, feeding her, helping her play, helping her interact, role playing with her, telling her stories. And so it just didn't seem like there was any time for me, especially after 3 kids. And my husband took a trip to Hawaii, and he came back and he said, we've got to get back into shape. And I said, yeah, okay, that sounds great. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy. I have all these other things going on. My daughter had a home therapy program that was 6 hours a day. I had 2 other kids. I had a toddler. I had an infant. Like, I can't do it. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to. Okay, great. A few weeks later, it's, well, why don't you just come and meet her? Like, okay. So I take an hour and I find a sitter and I go and meet her, and we sit down, and she does this wheel of priorities and how I don't have time, and like, where in your life could you find time? Like, okay. So we decide to get some help a little bit so I can work out. So I start working out 1 day a week, which then I realize that it feels amazing, and I'm stronger and I'm healthier and I have more energy, and I can spend more time with my family now because I'm taking time away from my family. And so I ask her if we can meet twice a week. And now I've found that time to go work out. And then a little, I start to lose weight and I'm feeling even better. I'm like, hey, can we meet 3 times a week? Because this is really great. Like, this has reinvigorated and changed my life back into like my old me. I'm starting to feel human again. And so we worked out 3 times a week for a short time, and then scaled back to twice a week, which I still work with her twice a week now. But finding that time was definitely a challenge, because I had every excuse in the book why I wasn't going to do it. And even now, I'm her earliest client. She meets with me at 5:30, 2 days a week. But if I don't get up and do it, I just don't feel like me. Like, finding that time has been so important for me to get everything else done. It changes my mindset and changes my attitude. And especially with running a small business, I've found so much of it just comes from your attitude. If I walk in and I'm grumpy and crabby, suddenly the mood of the whole place is down. And I'm sure anybody else who is, managing or running a business has seen that interaction as well. It's not that you need to be on every day, but you need to project an air of positivity in some fashion, and I can't do that if I don't take that extra time for me.
Right. So right as well. As leaders, it's so important that we can walk in, work with our team, and whatever our mindset is, whatever our attitude is, whatever is coming out from us is basically reflected in the team. And I think that understanding the power and the influence we have over other people, we've got the power to change from a real negative mindset, attitude, culture, environment to a positive one. And I think that, again, if you're listening in, you just heard Tanya's story there about how she didn't have time. And, especially with the demands that you had from the kids and from your daughter, especially with that amount of, hands-on time, to then be able to say, okay, I will prioritize, and I want to, but I will prioritize my health and wellness, and to find the time. It always feels like there's no time available, but even in your incredible day, you found the time for yourself to do it. You now get up incredibly early, but you still get your 8 hours of sleep. So you're doing all those amazing things to make sure you're the best version of yourself every single day. So all credit to you, Tanya. And I want to challenge everybody that's listening in to do the same. Have a really good, long, hard look at yourself and find your time to look after yourself.
And it's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress.
Always,
Sure.
and that's so right. It's a long game, right? Wellness is for life. This is not an overnight quick fix. It's a process, and you got to keep working at it. It's hard work, and that's okay, because if you work at it like anything else, you'll get results in the end.
Absolutely, yeah. I realized that I needed to be stronger for my daughter. She was going to grow, and I wasn't going to be able to just pick her up and carry her around the house anymore. I was going to need to find another way. And for my other two children, like, I want to be there. I want to be healthy. I want to be, someday, they're still very young, but someday the grandmother who can still chase her grandkids around. And I had kids later in life, so that means staying healthier longer to be able to do those things.
Yeah.
So Tanya, where to from here? You're on lockdown at the moment. I presume the academy is not operating at the moment. So when you reopen, you've got this great model. It's working really well. You're having some great successes. Are you expanding the academy? Is this something that other parts of the country are going to have a look at? Where do you go from now?
Yeah, so that's our vision. The overarching goal is really to create a method of education that can be taught, that can be shared, that can help students anywhere all around the world. And so we're working on how to do that, whether it's through professional development programs, whether it's through expanding and opening more schools, training other teachers in other schools, helping other people to take on our model. We're really growing our school to be a base, kind of a base and a hub of what we're doing, improving the concept, and then taking it out to others and showing how inclusion can work, and how, when children are given higher expectations and given the support to meet those expectations, often they will. And with that comes a generation of students who see fellow students doing that. So when I was a kid, special education was back in a corner. It was a dark room. You didn't go there. There was no interaction. There were separate lunch hours, separate PE classes, separate everything. And so we just grow up not knowing, and you grow up with this fear that's just a misunderstanding. And if we can have a generation of students who all grow up working together, learning together, collaborating together, understanding that we might be different, but we all have strengths, and how can we use them all to work together to create new innovative ways of doing things, that shifts the mindset of the entire culture, which is the grand vision.
And I think, again, not just for schools, not just for education, but for leaders in general, that's an amazing attitude to have, because if we all think inclusively, if we all think differently, if we all think creatively, innovatively, that there's a lot we can do. And right now, COVID-19 is actually providing an interesting opportunity for individuals and businesses to innovate and change the way that they're doing things. So I think we're actually accelerating our journey as a result of having to work and think differently, which is kind of an extension of what you're doing. I'd love to really quickly ask you about the project that you guys did with Harold to design an open source way for him to get around. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's got so many parallels in our COVID-19 world.
Absolutely. So one of our graduate standards for our elementary students is influencing action. So how do they take the things that they've learned in class and in STEAM and in math and art and English and use those skills to really create and change something in the world around them? And this year's project has been a collaboration with the Mountain View High School engineering capstone class. And they wanted to create an open source prosthetic for disabled pets. And so they chose to use Harold as their model. He's very accommodating. He's interested in things. He's happy to put on clothes and devices. There he is. sleeping on his bed. And so, our students went through the initial process of what does Harold need? What would it look like? What would be best? How can we create this? And they brainstormed and they created prototypes. And then the Mountain View High School students came in and talked to them about what they were doing and the website and how to make it open source and how to create this thing. And then our students actually got to present to them their prototypes that they created. So they got some public speaking experience. They got to share their ideas. And then the high school students actually walked them through a whole brainstorming activity from there, taking some of the ideas our students had, some of the ideas that they had, bringing them together, and then have started to build prototypes. So actually right before the break, we were able to take a field trip to the Mountain View High School engineering lab and take a look at some of the prototypes that they've created, and take a look at all of the tools and all of the things that they do there. So one of the things that we try to do as an elementary educator is give students a broad base of knowledge. And you can't do or become what you can't see or hear about or learn about. And so the students got to go to the engineering lab, they got to see the drill presses, they got to see the 3D printers, they got to see the laser cutters and all the cool tools that the high school kids get to use to create the prototypes. And they had 3 or 4 different prototypes that Harold tried out. And then they had a feedback form for our students to take a look at. Like, what did you like? Did this one work? Didn't it? What do you think could be better? So taking them through that engineering process of brainstorming and design and recognizing the problem, creating certain solutions, trying them out, and then going back to the drawing board. This worked, this didn't work. How do we tweak it? How do we make it better? Which comes into our mindset, which is another one of our graduate standards, which is growth mindset. This didn't work. How do we try again? I didn't fail. I don't give up. I just figure out what about it didn't work and make the next rendition to be something better. And so how do we, that's part of what the high school students are teaching them. That's part of what we teach our students. And it's something that our educators work through all the time as well, because not every lesson goes as planned. So how do we change it? How do we make it better? It was still a good lesson. What didn't work? And something that all of us can do. It's something I certainly do as a leader all the time, with decisions and with conversations and with things that happen in daily life. But that's a quick overview of the Harold project. So they've finished a few prototypes that they liked the last time we visited them. And they are hoping to get us one actually within the next week or 2, that he can try out on a longer term basis to see how it does for durability and see if he really likes it and how it works on a daily basis. And then once we get to a point where they find a design that they really like, the goal is to open source it on a website where anybody would be able to go in for any of their disabled pets and put in their dimensions of, their hips, their legs, their paws. I'm not sure what, I'm making this up. It's not my, but the dimensions of their dog so that they could 3D print or create their own device that would be the same to be able to help a disabled pet anywhere in the world. And so to be able to have, 5, 6, 7-year-olds collaborating on this project that could help pets around the world is a huge project for them and really cool. And one way that they can see how what they're learning really does influence the world around them.
That's incredible. It's so cool. So I think, again, so many amazing experiences and so many amazing learnings that anybody can take away. This is not just about kids. It's not about education. Again, whatever we put our mind to, we can create. We can do much more than anybody would imagine. Who would imagine that, your group of children could, put together something so amazing where, potentially they will be able to enable people anywhere in the world to come along, pick up a design and 3D print a device for their pet to use to help their disabled pet get around. And that's just phenomenal. It's how we can, touch the lives of many, go far beyond what we imagine our capabilities to be. And I think, part of the values of your academy is around creating that future that we can't even imagine today. So Tanya, if anybody is interested to find out more about you, we will put that in the show notes, but just tell us, how can they find out more about Tanya, because you do speaking as well? How do they find out more about the Academy or Harold? Where do they look for you, Tanya?
Sure. So I'm easy to find. My own personal website is tanyasheckley.com. And that's where some of my speaking engagements are out there, and those things, because I do speaking, I do podcasts, I do outreach as much as I can to raise awareness for the school and share our story and help others as much as possible. And there are links there to the school's website. So the school is UP Academy SF, as in San Francisco.com, because we're in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then we're also active on Facebook under the same tag, Up Academy SF. We're on Twitter under the same tag, Instagram under the same tag. Harold is on Instagram at Harold on Wheels. So he has his own account. And I'm always available by email. I'm Tanya, Tanya, at upacademysf.com. We tried to keep things simple by using the same tag for everything.
Yeah, it gets hard to track, right?
Yeah. And of course, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Tanya Sheckley on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, I'd love to connect. I'd love to hear from people. I'd love to share the school's story. We're enrolling, we're building a distance learning program for next year for students who either don't want to, are afraid to, or can't go back to school for any reason, whether it's a family health issue, a personal health issue, or they've just found that they really enjoy distance learning. We'll have a program available next year that abides by our curriculum and our values, but is virtual.
Wonderful. So there you go. There's lots of ways to contact Tanya, and I would really encourage everyone to read more about Tanya and the Academy. She's got an amazing story. We've only touched on some of it today. Amazing parallels for any entrepreneur, anybody dealing with challenges, anyone who is in the same space, or perhaps has got children with disabilities and wants to find out more. Do check out Harold. He's an amazing little dog and a phenomenal story in his own right. And Tanya, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. You've inspired us, and I hope you've inspired the people listening and watching. And perhaps one day we can get you back to talk more about all the amazing work that you're doing.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Tanya. Bye.
Thank you, Tanya.
Bye-bye.